All right, Keenan, so we've all seen the new Denali Blue. Obviously, it's been around on tour for a little bit. Lots of guys are jumping into it, but nobody really knows anything about it pretty much. So can you run us through the typical sample stats of this shaft, as well as kind of who it was designed for and where you guys are trying to take the lineup?
Yeah, so we launched our Denali Blue in June or July, one of those at Barbasol in Kentucky, and it did really well for us. Got about 32, 33 sets in play that first week across the 3 tours that were going on. It's really good for a first week on tour, and then kind of progressed kind of through the silly season, as we call it, that fall season, and to get into more players' bags, and more questions were coming from it. So Denali was really a complement from our end to our HZRDUS line. So our HZRDUS line has been around for us for 7, 8 years now. Yeah. Very stout profile. People are really familiar with it. Either works well for them, or it's maybe a little too harsh, too aggressive for them. So Denali is going to kind of be that opposite, that counterpart to that HZRDUS line to really fit for that player who hasn't fit into HZRDUS before, to a Project X wood shaft before.
So first one that we came out with was the Denali Blue profile, obviously. So walk us through just what that profile is meant to do from a handle to tip section standpoint.
Yeah, so for Denali Blue, once again, trying to complement that HZRDUS line, something with a little more feel, but still maintain stability. So HZRDUS, if we're talking about geometries of a golf shaft, that's one way to control stiffness, has a long parallel in the butt section. So what that does is going to be a very stiff handle. So that's where kind of that feeling, that really stout feeling of HZRDUS comes from. With Denali, we shorten that parallel up, so it's still parallel, it's not a straight taper. So you're going to get that stability in the hand, so at the top of your swing it's going to keep up with you. And then from there on down, it's a straight taper, so you get that really smooth feel and kind of release of energy throughout the swing.
Yeah, I've noticed that for people like myself, I have a pretty aggressive transfer at the top, so finding something that helps provide a little bit of launch can be a challenge, because that tighter handle usually does not work well for us. But I noticed right away, throwing a Denali in a 3-wood, that handle section is more applicable to like the modern age golfer, and I think that's kind of where this lineup is going. Of everybody's getting a little bit more aggressive because the speed just keeps going up, 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 up. You know that working with the college guys, that speed just keeps increasing at the amateur levels. So it was an awesome product to be able to help out with that launch. We also obviously are now noticing there's a new color up here on the wall. So we've got a Denali, I'm just assuming it's Denali black, correct?
Yes.
So walk us through the differences of that profile. Obviously HZRDUS has black, blue, red. So it's probably the same structure, but just walk us through what that profile is going to give us.
Yeah, so with Denali Blue, with how well it was received from that initial launch at Barbasol, kind of the piece of feedback we got was, oh, this is great. It's maybe just a little too spinny for me for some of those high spin players, which is perfect because it's supposed to be more of that mid spin option for us. So that was actually a good thing to hear. And so, our engineers got together, our R&D team with our tour guys, trying to get this black part just right. It's basically be kind of a more tip stiff, a little more stout option than that blue. So it's going to be a touch stiffer, so a little higher CPM, just a few CPMs, but also that tip section is going to be much stiffer. So that lower launching, kind of lower spinning design you see from most kind of black shafts on the market.
Yeah, and then same design up into the handle with that parallel section being shorter?
Correct, so same mandrel exactly.
So compared to HZRDUS then, because that's going to be the first question, right? HZRDUS Gen 4 black compared to Denali black. What are you going to notice are the differences? I think I can probably tell based on the feedback so far, but just walk us through why somebody would play one over the other, basically.
So as you know, people have different preferences from golf shafts from a feel perspective specifically. And so between these two, you're just going to get to kind of a similar outcome, just in different ways. And also it's just going to time up with you differently. So for Denali, for me, personally, I've always been scared of shafts that people kind of promote as a smoother feeling shaft. Because the last thing I want as kind of a somewhat higher swing speed player is for it to feel like it's getting behind me.
Absolutely, it's the same thing.
That's not what you want at all. So Denali actually does, like we said, with that shorter butt parallel, a really good job at preventing that from happening. But it still provides that feel from the midsection down. That's buttery. And so that black part is going to still provide that feel we're looking for, with that stability in the tip specifically, that HZRDUS black shaft's going to give you.
So if you're somebody that's just all raw power, that's all you're worried about, you're not super concerned with feel, you're just swinging as hard as you can every single time, you're probably going to end up still in the HZRDUS. If you're somebody that wants a little bit more finesse, a little bit more workability maybe, and you also like to feel that head a little bit more, you're going to find similar launch characteristics, but with a better feel in the Denali for those players.
Yep, 100%.
Awesome, perfect. The only other thing that we should probably talk about is the availability of the golf shafts. So what weights and flexes are we looking at for the blue, and then what weights and flexes are we looking at for the black?
Yeah, so for the blue, we're going to have 50 to 70 grams in a multiple flex range, and an 80 gram TX part. And then on the black, we're going to have 60 to 80 grams multiple flex range. And then probably a hybrid part at some point for that black, but right now we do have a 105 gram tour only hybrid part for the blue as well.
Awesome. And then The numerical flex system is staying, so this is a Project X part, so you have that 6.5, 6.0, 5.5, 5.0 flex.
Correct.
And then available in select weights per those flexes, basically, at that point.
Yep, 100%.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so one of the common questions that I get asked all the time is the comparison between the new Denali Blue and then the HZRDUS Smoke RDX Blue, obviously. Yep. The one thing to note, people, about the RDX Blue is there's counterbalance properties inherently involved in this golf shaft. The industry has used this for that purpose. I know tons of people that build these when they're trying to eliminate a little bit of that swing weight, or they're playing heavier heads, something like a ping head, something like that. Yep. But the Denali Blue is not going to give you those same characteristics. So you talked earlier about the new design in the handle here. That parallel section stops a lot sooner, so you're not going to get that same counterbalance property as you do with the RDX Smoke Blue, and that's an important distinction to make. It might say on paper that it's a mid-spin, mid-launch. That doesn't mean they're built the exact same way. The design's a little bit different.
Correct, yeah. And so if we're going to talk about swing weight a little bit, I put this almost in between that blue, which is counterbalance, like you said, and our black, which is a little lower balance point than some other shafts out there. So it's pretty swing weight neutral.
Something super tip stiff, something with a little more meat in the handle, and then Denali Blue is going to fall right in between.